Hello, my name is Cheryl Ashe, and I'm your host for Have You Read? Have You Read is an on-air book discussion program. I like to talk about books that I think will be of interest to the African American community. Now, I have an author with me today, and the author is Sheridan Lyons-Verse. Did I pronounce it right?
Yes.
And not only is she an author, but she is also an artist. So we're going to look at some of her artwork first. Come on, show me the first one, and then tell me a little bit about it.
Well, this one I call it Thinking Out Loud. Because at the time that I was drawing it, I mean, being an African American woman, I love drawing faces of women. I always enjoyed that. So when I drew her thinking, and the colors are kind of representation of her thoughts, just many colors. So that's kind of how she came about.
Thoughts for many colors.
Yes, that's kind of how that one came about.
Now our next one.
This one I call Creation. When I was drawing this one, I was thinking of the hand of God actually pulling Adam out of the ground. And so that's kind of what inspired this one. It's kind of one of my favorites, though. It's a little different. I used a little digital art there, cheated a little bit, but I like it.
I like the color. And the symbolism. I really do like that.
This is one of my favorite animals. So I love the majestic nature of lions. I enjoy watching them actually on television because their life, the way they live by their instinct, just, all around boss. So I got that when it came out. And this one was inspiring to me because of her hair. I love natural hair. I'm a very big advocate of it. When it comes to our hair, I think it's beautiful in its natural state. So that inspired me to draw this. I actually saw this. It was a photograph in a book. So that's kind of where her face came from. But I love the hair, so.
What I'm going to ask you now, how old were you, do you think, when you first started drawing?
I had to be about 6 or 7, at least 6 or 7.
Okay.
Start picking up pencils and doodling a little bit, and it just happened. It has to be a gift because I didn't know anything.
Right.
So it has to be a gift.
Now, did you take any art classes in high school?
Yes, I did. As a matter of fact, in high school, I was voted the most artistic female. I went from there to the Art Institute of Chicago.
Right.
And
I love
I
to
took
go to the
classes.
museum.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool school. And we had to have portfolios actually to get in. I was real shocked that they allowed me, I didn't, because sometimes when you're an artist, you don't really think your work is, but when others see it and they react, and then you go, oh, okay.
Well, one of the things that I was telling you before we started, that I had dated a person who very similar, started young, etc. And one of the things I think happens in the African American community is that while we appreciate it, we'll encourage that child. For instance, if it's a male child, and this was in his case talked about, his brothers were in sports, and so the father really, really encouraged the other brothers, but they never encouraged him in his art. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you'll find that will happen, unfortunately, in the African American community is they don't encourage artists, and particularly if that artist doesn't draw what I call characters, draw people that they look at. Mm-hmm. And who are the people that encourage you with your art?
My mother, I would have to say, was like my number one fan. I mean, I'd be working on a picture, and I remember her just bringing me something to drink, things like that. That was an encouragement, whether she knew it or not,
Right.
because I'm sitting there and I'm concentrating and I'm working. School, they helped a lot as far as encouragement. My very first portrait of a face that I did in 7th grade, and my teacher took it and hung it in a case, a showcase, so everybody could see it, and that was encouraging, especially at that age.
Right. And I just am talking about this because I'm hoping that the adults out there start thinking about, encouraging the kids that are around them when they, other than encourage them in sports. Encourage them if they sing, encourage them if they dance. Particularly if it's not what we always associate with being African American. If they sing a different type of music, they don't sing R&B, they don't sing rap, they choose to sing some other kind of music. If they're an artist, but they don't draw, like you say, the portraits or the cartoons, but they do some abstract things, to encourage them. And if they're writers, which you are, to encourage them. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about, because I asked you to come on because you're an author and you wrote a book. When did you start, not this book, but when did you start writing? Where you were taking stuff inside of you and expressing it in the written word.
I have to say back in high school,
Okay.
I took an honors English class in high school, and the teacher was a ex-journalist, so she was big into writing, and she taught us quite a bit about it, and she actually asked us to write an essay once in high school, and then when we wrote the essay, and I kind of rushed in class really, and I literally wrote this thing in like 15 minutes. And it had something to do with being in high school. I lived in Chicago then, we were in the inner city. So when I wrote it, I was just doing it for my grade, really, just get my work off. So then I came to find out later that my paper had been chosen to represent our school district.
Wow.
I actually got an award for it, and that was really shocking. So that kind of gave me a clue. You can write a little bit, So that was encouraging to me to continue to write. And then once I got into college, I had a teacher, after I wrote an essay, he said, you need to check into being on the journalist team. So those kind of things kind of pushed me towards writing. And after that, I would write, but it was more for personal, just journaling, things like that.
Now, my question is, what propelled you to go from writing just internally for you to wanting to share your writing with others?
To be honest, it was my husband.
Mm-hmm.
He told me, after hearing my story, being single, he said, other women need to hear this. They need to hear your story. You need to write about this. And so that's actually how the book was born.
And he saw your story as being of use to other people, and you didn't realize that. And, why a book about relationships? Because your book is about relationships. But before I ask you that question, I'm going to let him put a picture of the book up.
Okay.
Okay. The name of the book is The Relationship Game, Gems from My Journey by Sheridan Lyons-Verse. Now I'm going to repeat it. And The Relationship Game, Gems from My Journey, and it's by Sheridan Lyons-Verse. This book is available as a Kindle book on Amazon. And but I'm the old-fashioned librarian. I gotta read it. In fact, I was finishing it up today while I was eating lunch. Okay, I got to have the paper. So the book is also available online, or there's a post office box number, and they're going to be putting up that post office box number for me and everything.
It can actually be ordered at my website if
Yes.
you want a physical book.
Yes, and that website is www.SHERLYONSE.com.
Mm-hmm.
And do you offhand know your post office box that you can give? I didn't write it down.
I don't have a post office.
Okay. So yes, look on the website, and you can order it if you need it in paperback.
Mm-hmm.
And now again, what propelled you to write a book about relationships and
Relationship is at the very core of our existence. I mean, from the womb, we're learning relation. The mother's relating to the baby, and maybe the baby, if the father's talking to the stomach. You know, there's a bond being made even before we're here. So when we get into a relationship, we often think that we automatically know. It's not something that we actually teach per se. Most of the time we're watching family members and we're learning from them, but there's not really literally a learning process that comes with relationship that I've seen. And that I think is a major issue, because in this day and time with information, we really need to be giving that type of information out as well. How, to deal with the opposite sex, especially to our younger people that are coming into adulthood. The hormones are kicking in and raging and things, they're feeling this and they're feeling that. They need to know how to handle that, how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think you bring up a good point is that our first teachers of relationships are families.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us are fortunate enough to have families that can model good relationships, good ways that men and women, not even just and from a romantic standpoint, how brothers and sisters treat each other, how mothers treat their sons, how fathers treat their daughters, how aunts and uncles treat each other. And again, if you're lucky, you see what I call good role modeling. But unfortunately, there are far too many people that see the bad role modeling, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Someone, when they get angry, cussing at person, calling them the B word, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Women calling the man the B word, the BA word, and stuff like that. And so when people don't have those good role models, and they often, what word I'm going to say, they often play out what they see.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing your book talks about is relationships, and I can see that you were concerned about what you're seeing today. You want to talk a little bit about that for me?
Yeah, because the relationships that we see today are mostly for selfish gain, a lot of them. People go into a relationship trying to get what we call a come up, oh, well, I need help with this, I need help with that. And, if the person that they're looking at has the means, the next thing you know, they're in a relationship. But that's not exactly a genuine purpose for doing it.
Right.
And most of the time, it does not last, because nobody wants to be used, number one. And number two, your motives are not right for doing it. So, we go and we march down to the altar and we make a bunch of promises that we know we're not going to keep. And the other thing is, there's no longevity in relationships today. Divorce is very easy to get. So it's always kind of like, well, if I don't like this, I'm out of here. So people are not, I think, encouraged to even work at it anymore like they used to. It used to be that marriage was, sanctimonious thing, and it was something that, you cherished. But now it's almost a business transaction. And so the violence in it is the other thing that bothers me, because you have global homicide studies that are showing that half of the women victims have been killed by an intimate partner,
right,
or a family member. So when we look at that, we know there's a huge dysfunction when it comes to what we're calling relationship.
And I think that you talk in your book about what is a successful relationship. And I think that's why books like these are important, is because for people who haven't seen a successful relationship, they don't know what to judge by. So talk a little bit about what you talk about in your book about successful relationships.
Successful relationships, number one, you have to be truthful. And I deal with that a lot because truth is paramount. If you don't enter into it truthfully, most of the time, all of the motives come out, and the next thing you know, you're looking at somebody you don't even recognize.
Give an example of where you have seen untruthfulness in going into a relationship.
When you have men that prey on women, say, in my own, experience, women that have low self-esteem, there are men that see them and they know it when they see it. So right away, okay, well, I'll go for her. You know what I mean? And those type of motives can damage a person so bad because once it all comes out and you find out, that this was this person's ulterior motive for even talking to you in the first place, or the superficiality of it, you look so good, I want to be with you, but it's all because you look so good. Because all of that stuff over time is going to change. You want somebody that's genuinely going to love you for you, whether you're looking good today or you're not looking good today. And most of us want that. But I see in society now that we have opted for the anything goes, and there's so much competition out here as far as relationships go. There's always somebody that looks better. So you cannot depend on looks. You have to go deeper than that. And that's kind of what I address. You have to go deeper into that person actually and find out what they're really about. And there are going to be some things you like, some things you don't like. In the decision of loving somebody, you're going to have to love all of it. What you like and what you don't like.
Right. And you talk about, and I think this is very, very important, because you talk about how a lot of the younger, and not so younger people, okay, put a disproportionate amount of money, okay, into hair, into clothes, and I say disproportionate because I've seen people, through my volunteer work, I've seen people who are sweating because their electric bill's getting ready to get shut off, okay? But they have paid $75 to get their braids in, but their electric bill. You know what I mean? And particularly if they know that the weekend's coming and they're going out. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, you're capable of doing your own hair. No, you may not be capable of putting in the braids, okay? But you're capable of washing, and whether you press, whether you give yourself a permanent, whether you go natural, whatever, you're capable of doing that. And your situation isn't such that you can afford the $75, you know what I mean, to pay to have the hair done, let alone you've got to buy the hair and all. And when you were in your book talking about how many young people have so much emphasis on the looks, and it is true, because I read this, it is true that biologically animals, and we are an animal, are attracted to looks. The peacock has a brighter color, the bird has this, so it is looks. We're not lying about that. Looks do attract people, but you're talking about they don't get past that.
No, and that's one of the main things. It's okay to be pretty and look nice. God made us women. We are pretty. He formed us that way.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with looking good or making sure, that everything is done. Now, when you take it to the extent of what you just described, your rent is due and you're buying an outfit for Saturday.
Right.
Now, that's extreme, and there's definitely a problem. We cannot put so much emphasis on the way that we look and not deal with our inside issues. Because just because a car is great looking on the outside, you get it home, they have a lemon law because it could not work.
Right.
So it's the same kind of issue when it comes to people. If all you're interested in is how that person looks, that can be very deceiving.
Mm-hmm.
As they say, all that glitter is not gold. That's true. That could be very deceiving. And if we would work on our innermost person
Mm-hmm.
more so
Mm-hmm.
than we do on the outer,
Mm-hmm.
we would be even more beautiful.
I want you to spend a little time, because I thought the section of the book where you addressed being single, and you talked about what happens to single women often. So spend a little time talking about that.
But for myself, being single, I really escaped an abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And God literally had to give me the strength to walk away, because it's not always easy. You know, sometimes you look at women that are going through that and you say, well, why don't you just leave? It's really not that simple, because sex is a bonding agent.
Right.
And God designed it in boundaries. That's why it's in the boundaries of marriage, because it bonds two people together spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do that and then we try to walk away, physically you may be away, but your soul, your emotions are still tied to that person.
And I think that's an important part you just said. So reiterate it again, because I thought that was one of the most important things you pointed out in the book.
When you are sexually intimate with a person, it bonds you to them. That's what marriage is. Two become one.
Mm-hmm.
So when two become one, you're connected to that person, even though you physically remove yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's so hard for people to break up.
Mm-hmm.
That's why 1 in 7 women, 1 in 8 men are reporting to the Domestic Violence Bureau that they're being stalked by somebody that they used to be intimate with.
Mm-hmm.
They can't let go.
Mm-hmm.
That bond is there.
And for men, unfortunately, that often turns into violence. They've been left,
Mm-hmm.
and they cannot deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And because, men can have low self-esteem too.
Yes.
Unfortunately, sometimes for men, and I've seen it with a woman, because I have a client
Mm-hmm.
and who falls in this category. His wife was committing domestic violence on him.
Mm-hmm.
It was a marriage that never should have happened. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And it has been very difficult for him to walk away. And they have 2 children, but it's been difficult for him to walk away. And he has custody of the kids.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And only with a little bit of help has he been able to do that. You know what I'm saying? And by talking with his minister, by getting some counseling, was he able to not keep being sucked back in?
Yeah, and see, that's the thing people don't realize. When you make that bond, it pulls on you.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you're not with that person anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking about where they're at, what are they doing. You go through that. And young people especially, when they embark on these adult relationships, they're emotionally not ready to deal with that aspect. So they in turn can get very volatile when it comes to that, or suicidal even, because they just cannot handle being without this person, because they bonded. That's why when you hear people say, that they're virgins and they're, abstinent, and people kind of raise an eyebrow and say, well, what's wrong with you?
Right.
There's nothing wrong with them. That's actually a better way to be than to be bonded with someone, because at least you are able to assess the situation that you're in or going into, and you can see it clearly. When your emotions are involved and all tied up in your feelings, you don't really think clearly. You can't.
I'm going to have them put up on the screen again your website, which of course is www.SHERRIDONSVERSE.com. The name of the book is The Relationship Game, Gems from My Journey by Sheridan Lyons-Verse.
Mm-hmm.
And we've only got a few minutes left. So what I kind of would like to finish asking you is, you use chess as an analogy throughout the book. Why using chess?
Because chess, I learned to play it at the age of 8, actually, but it interested me because it kind of reminded me of a relationship. When you're in a relationship, the first thing that's happening is movement, the moves, because he'll do this, and then based on what he does, you do this, or vice versa. And that's kind of how a chess game goes. But also, when you are genuinely deciding to love this person, you should be able to just bring all of your pieces, you know, all of them. And so that's kind of where the chess game came from. And then it's the thought provoking. You have to kind of figure out, you know, okay, where is he going from here? Where is they going from there?
Right.
And so it kind of makes you think a little bit. And relationships, people are treating very much like a game now.
Right.
So you have manipulation and mind control and all of these things that are coming into play because they're trying to outmaneuver the other. And that's kind of where it came from.
Okay. Well, I really want to recommend this book because I thought it was excellent as it talks about, you know, loneliness, that single people have to learn to deal with that far too many single people, what did you say, they jump into a relationship out of loneliness, not knowing anything about the person. And your book does talk about ways to deal with loneliness.
Oh, yeah. One thing that I learned, you know, God began to show me, because when your emotions and you remove yourself, your body has to be disconnected too. Once your emotions are allowed to heal, and that can happen if you would just kind of be still and pull back, stay out of a relationship. But everybody's pushing you to be in one, especially society, television, movies, everybody. So then you're, you know, instead of taking that time to let your soul heal and let all of yourself come back, you just jump into the next relationship. And then you carry what was over here, over here. So it just perpetuates one after the other. And you actually find yourself repeating those same things, finding that same person. Even though it's a different person, the spirit of that person is the same because that's what you're attracted to.
And you haven't taken the time to heal and to discover yourself. Well, this is definitely a good book. The Relationship Game, Gems from My Journey, Sheridan Lyons-Verse. I hope they'll put this picture up of the cover of the book and information where you can get that book from. So even though I may be talking and you're seeing the information about where to get the book, I strongly recommend that you get this book. And I want to thank you for joining me today and talking about your book.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm going to ask you that you join me again next month for Have You Read, an on-air book discussion program. Thank you. Well, yeah, thanks. What I was wanting to say to you was,